Good evening. We are back into public session. We have returned, from executive session, and I would like to inform everyone that this is the regular scheduled board meeting of Richland 1 Commissioners. The time is now 7:01. The date is Tuesday, October 26, 2021, and we are located at C.A. Johnson High School, address 2219 Bonneville Road, Columbia, South Carolina 29203. Pursuant to the Freedom of Information Act, FOIA, the public will be provided access to the live stream of the meeting via the district's website, www.richland1.org. We do have an agenda set before us. Our first order of business on the agenda is our call to order. Then it is 5.01, the invocation, which is presented by Commissioner Clyburn.
Thank you. Can we bow our heads, please? Lord, we bow our heads and open our hearts as you guide our decisions to make us safer, even better, and strive to be more inclusive and equitable for all students and all of our schools at Richland District 1. Lord, we pray and ask for all strength and all guidance as you lead our decisions for our entire district. Thank you. Amen.
Amen. Commissioner Clyburn, thank you for your invocation. Also, thank you for your service that you are providing to Richland School District 1 and beyond. So thank you for what you do. We're now at item 5.02. We do have an agenda before us. No changes to the agenda, Dr. Witherspoon?
No, sir.
All right, we'd like to entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
Move for approval, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Been moved by Commissioner Harris, second by Commissioner Myers, that we accept the agenda as published. Question or discussion? Seeing none, hearing none, we'll now cast our vote. We're casting our vote. It is 6-0. The ayes have it. Please let the record show that 6 commissioners are in attendance tonight. We'll now go to item 5.03. We have a few items of public participation. As stated before, we do invite our public to take part of the privilege of public participation. Upon receiving and reading your comments, we will respond to you within 7 to 10 business days. And at this time, we have Ms. Wilson to read public participation. Also, be informed that names will not be shared in any form or fashion when reading the comments. At this time, Ms. Wilson, thank you.
Good evening, Chairman Bishop and board members. We received 4 submissions for tonight's meeting. However, a request was made for public participation to be anonymous, so the district will research this request further. The second submission, parent with initials FA. Good evening. I have 2 boys, and I have several complaints about communication, false reports, doing fraudulent documents. I have been reaching out to, they have been in meetings all year round, left messages with the secretary over a month ago, never returned any of my phone calls, poor communication. I also have problems with the privacy with y'all's system is very poor, and remove all of my phone numbers for my kids, put me on block. This has been happening now for 3 years, reported it. Also, she stopped kids couldn't go to a game with you missing 10 tardies, good idea. But my thing is, the handbook says that you need to notify a parent are consistently harassing my sons. Third submission is from Ms. Jennifer Baker, and it is a point of view that she wishes to share with the board. Our schools are open, our academic, fine art, and sports teams are meeting and competing. Why are our school board meetings still 100% virtual, and when can we expect them to resume in person? Our students, teachers, and school-level administrators are working hard each day in person in their classrooms and schools. It's time these meetings resumed in person. Thank you for your time. The fourth and final submission is from Mr. Mark Smith, and also a point of view he wishes to share with the board. My neighbor is a teacher, and every day she come home after dark tired. How are you supporting these young teachers to be able to create work-life balance? That completes public participation, Chairman Bishop.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. Thank you for reading those public participation comments. As stated before, the administration will respond to you within 7 to 10 business days. We're now going to the consent agenda. Item 6.01 are the minutes, October 12th, 2021. 6.2, contract extension, online student registration software maintenance and support. Item 6.03, contract extension antivirus software maintenance. 6.04, contract extension wireless software support renewal. 6.05, contract extension log me in maintenance and support services. 6.06, September 2021 abbreviated financials. I'd like to entertain a motion to accept all these consent agenda items.
Move for approval to accept consent agenda items as presented.
Second.
Been moved by Commissioner Devine, second by Commissioner Harris. Question or discussion for any one of these items? Okay, Commissioner King.
Mr. Bishop, I have one observation on the minutes, item 6.01. Although it is reflected in the public participation, I think that a correction needs to be made on the executive session portion under Office of the Board. It was action 3.01. We did not have a student appeal, so that needs to be removed from the executive session. My other question,
Duly noted.
thank you so much. I have a question about 604, 605. So if somebody from IT could take that, and I have a question, a real quick question about 606. So 604 and 605 have to do with software, and I'd like to understand what they do, please. Thank you.
Yes, good evening, Commissioners. 6.04 is the wireless software. This is for the Xeris.
Would you mind speaking up a little bit or bringing the microphone
I'm
to
sorry,
you?
can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Here, let me see if that's better.
Yes.
All right, 6.04 is the renewal for the Xeris wireless systems. There were some of the, this is the old system that we've been in process of replacing, but there were some that we have not been able to replace as of yet. So we had to renew the systems for those. It provides the wireless access for the student devices in the schools.
So does that have to do with capacity and enlarging the I guess the highway for student access, or is that what it is?
Yes, it is. It's just the wireless routers that are mounted in different areas in the schools that the students connect to. We've replaced most of those devices, but there are some that, due to supply chain issues, the devices to replace them are on back order, so we are renewing this system to keep the wireless systems functional until those devices can be replaced.
So this is a temporary solution?
Yes, come next year, that item will no longer be in use in the district.
Okay, gotcha. What about the other one, the Log Me In?
Yes, ma'am. Item 6.05, the Log Me In, that is our software that we use for remote support. It allows us, initially we used this at our help desk, but when the pandemic hit, we expanded the usage of it so that our field techs could also use it. It allows us to remote into a student or employee's device and fix a large number of problems remotely without them having to bring a device in to be repaired.
So they let you know, you have a system for them to submit like a ticket or an issue, and then you can try to do the fix remotely?
Yes, ma'am. Either when they can either call our help desk or when they submit a ticket through our work order system, and then one of our technicians will reach out to them, and Log Me In sets up a session through their browser so that the technician can see their computer and they can go in and fix about 70% of the problems that come up. They can be fixed easily remotely without someone having to bring their device in to be repaired.
So they take the controls over essentially?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I got you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, any other questions from any board members at this time?
I have the 606,
Okay,
if you
keep
don't
going.
mind.
All right.
So that has to do with financials. Ms. Matthews Hazel, I was just wondering, was looking at the, essentially the hang on just one sec. The fund balance, essentially, right? Or the $80 million? Like the cash?
Yeah,
Right, it's,
can you hear me, Ms. King?
yes, I can.
Okay, the $80 million cash and investment balance.
So,
80.16 million?
yes.
Yes.
So, I looked at it for last year. It did like a month-to-month comparison, which is very basic at my level of finance. And so last year it was at $70 million. What creates those fluctuations?
Well, it's just like your checkbook, your bank balance. It depends on when you pay an expenditure. So your bank balance can vary, just depends on when we pay certain expenditures. And from year to year, we issue purchase orders for various items as well as for construction. So it would be hard to compare because from year to year, it depends on what we budget for and when those invoices are due. And there's really no pattern for it. It depends on that department, how they monitor their budget.
Okay, thank you.
That it?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Any other question or discussion? Seeing none, hearing none, we'll now cast our vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Is a 6-0 vote. The ayes have it. We're now at item 7.01, contract purchase of new iPads, presented by Mrs. Alton.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Dr. Witherspoon, the administration is requesting approval to award a contract to Apple Computers to provide new iPads, approximately 200 iPads for district-wide use. The administration so recommends.
You heard the recommendation of administration. What's the pleasure of the board?
Move for approval.
Second.
Been moved by Commissioner Harris, second by Commissioner Devine. Question or discussion? Is that you, Ms. King? Okay, Commissioner King.
Yes, thank you. I've got a couple of questions about this. So we have we have essentially a technology composition of Microsoft-based product and Apple-based product. I know that Microsoft-based products are probably predominant, but what would you say the ratio is? And the iPads, what do we designate like specific applications and activities when we buy that? And is it more? I mean, is it across the board, elementary through high? What makes it that we use certain things for, and how is it at the request of teachers or for certain activities?
I will defer that to either Dr. Broussard or Ms. Kopach. Dr. Kopach?
Dr.
Can you
Broussard,
repeat the
I know on
question?
this particular item, but you won't speak to this particular item?
I didn't understand your question.
My question is, we've got a combination of Microsoft-based products. I mean, all of our
Sure.
laptops are, and we also have Apple products, and we've had them for a number of years. I was just wondering, what sort of like that ratio is, knowing that probably the Microsoft products are predominant throughout the district, but what makes it that we think that, that we differ? Microsoft versus Apple, what kind of applications are we looking at?
Some of the applications, Ms. King and Dr. Witherspoon was absolutely correct. Some of the applications are specific to students with disabilities. Some of the other applications are specific to early childhood. I don't know the exact ratio. We can get that information for you, but it's really based on instructional need.
And for student with disabilities, is it because of the ease of the touchscreen, or is it because Microsoft also has touchscreen, or is it because of certain things that Apple has really championed through their?
Well, sometimes it has to do with the application. So, as you know, we have some robots that we use for social emotional learning. And sometimes when you want to buy a piece of equipment, you have to use the tool that the company has aligned that with. And so in some instances, we need to use an Apple product because it is what's used to support a particular piece of equipment that we need.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, any other questions at this time? All right, seeing none, hearing none, we'll now cast our vote. All those in favor? And all those opposed? It's a 6-0 vote. The ayes have it. We're now under Office of Academics, 8.01, which is 2020-2021 accountability presentation presented by Dr. Minor and Dr. Broussard.
Good evening, Chairman Bishop, Dr. Witherspoon, and Board of Commissioners. I'm going to make sure that my slides are working. There we go. So we know that COVID was a strange year, 2019 and 2020, and we hope that 2020 and 2021 were going to put us back on the regular train, and it did happen to a certain extent, but we still had some effects based on accountability and our data. And so just wanted to provide this handout. All of you should have a copy of these slides. And the first part will be the data, and then the second part will go to Dr. Broussard as she talks about what our next steps are. So in July of 2020, South Carolina did request a waiver for the suspension of accountability testing for the 2020-2021 school year. And in March of 2021, the waiver for testing was denied. However, they did suspend the federal participation guidelines of 95%. And when that was announced, it was a little bit too late, and we did have a little bit of a difficult time bringing in some of the students for testing. So the numbers were lower statewide as far as the number of students that came in for South Carolina Pass, South Carolina Ready. And so what we did give, we gave the state ACT and SAT, AP exams, IB exams. We still had our dual enrollment, South Carolina Ready, South Carolina Pass, our end-of-course tests, and then our WIN testing, our career testing. And then we did look at graduation rate and dropout rate. And as it says, there were no report card ratings due to the lack of data. We do have some data, but it's a skip year, so we didn't have a lot to compare that with. And so that is what we looked at this past year. So of course, for grades 3 through 8, we had South Carolina Ready ELA, South Carolina Ready Math, and South Carolina Pass in science only for grades 4 and 6. At the high school level, we had our Ready to Work and WIN, end of course examinations, the state ACT or state SAT, graduation rate, the senior ACT and senior SAT, our AP exams, and then our IB exams. And so as we take a look at our South Carolina Ready and South Carolina Pass, we look at the, I went too fast. We look at the numbers that were tested, just a comparison. So in 2019 in our district for South Carolina Ready, altogether grades 3 through 8, we tested 10,789 students. And you can see in 2021, we tested 6,830 students for a difference of 3,959. And in math, we tested 10,796 students. In 2021, we tested 6,905 for a difference of 3,891. And then you can see the differences there for South Carolina Pass in grade 4 and grade 6. And then I also wanted to just show the discrepancies statewide that you can see. For South Carolina Ready statewide, they tested 50,110 less students in ELA and 49,528 less students in math. And then in South Carolina Pass, statewide, we tested 20,189 less students that were tested in science. So when we look at our averages, in ELA at the district level, 41.27% does not meet expectations, 26.92% approaching expectations, 17.17% meets, 14.62% is exceeds, and the total approaching meets and exceeds was 58.73%. And then underneath that, you see what the state totals were. For math, does not meet, 51.13%. For approaching, 24.42%. For meets, 12.2%. For exceeds, 12.27%, for a total of 48.87% for approaching meets and exceeds. And again, the state numbers are underneath that. When we look at South Carolina Pass, this is just for grades 4 and 6 for science. Does not meet, 49.3%. Approaching, 18.35%. Meets, 17.1%. Exceeds, 15.25%. And a total approaching meets and exceeds of 50.7%, and the state averages are underneath. When we looked at our end-of-course testing, district-wide, you'll see our subjects, Algebra 1, and then the state average. We have Biology, English 2, and then U.S. History and the Constitution. When we are reported on the report card for our end-of-course tests, they basically only report a C or higher, but when we always include the D because that does say how many students actually did pass, and then we also want to give you what the mean score was, and that is our mean score for the district and then the mean score or the average score statewide. So you can look at the percentage of students who scored a D, a C, a B, an A, and the mean score. And if you look at English 2, we were pretty close to the state average for English 2 at that point in time. When we talk about our Ready to Work test, this is our career test that we give our students. We will have a new test coming up in the spring. This is the last time that we are able to give the Ready to Work WIN test due to a lawsuit from ACT. And so we will have a new test for that, but this was the last time, and you can see we're looking at the certificate levels. And so this is basically allowing us to see, are our students ready to go out and be able to keep jobs, and are they career ready to walk out? And so you can see for our certificates, we had 21.8% bronze level, 40.8% silver, 9.6 gold, 0.4 of platinum, and a percentage of our students that received certificates were 72.6. And the types of tests that are given for this, they have an applied mathematics, a locating information, and a reading for information. And so you can see the percentages there from level 3 up to level 7, along with the state information. Then we're going to talk about our state ACT and SAT. So when we're looking at college readiness, we can receive accountability points based on if a student scores high enough on their ACT and SAT. All third-year high school students have an option to take either the ACT or the SAT. It is paid for by the state, and the parents have to let us know if they would like their child to take that test and which test they would like. We cannot just place them into a test. And it is scored the same way as if they are taking it on their own, whether they're going on a Saturday or coming in for a school day. And so when we look at the number of assessments from 2019 to 2020 and 2021, and of course, you know, at one point in time in the year, it became optional. Before that, it was mandated that they have to take the test, and now it is optional for them. And you can see the changes in the numbers, a 2-year change and a 3-year change between the state ACT and the state SAT. And then if you look at our average ACT, we did increase from 2020 to 2021, 1.3 percentage points in English, 0.4 in math, 1/10 in reading, 0.8 in science, and 0.6 in the composite score. And of course, the scores range from a 1 to a high of 36. When we're looking at an SAT average by student and subject, difference in the reading and writing, we improved by 9.5%, math 0.6, and our total overall by 10.1%. And the sections for reading and math can be anywhere from 200 to 800, and the total possible points are between 400 and 1,600. And now we look at our graduation rate, and this is something that I know that the district has worked very, very hard on. And you can see that we had the highest graduation rate that the district has ever had last year of 85.8% and beat the state average. And I know that the schools and all of the administrators have worked very, very hard at that, along with the students, to be able to make that graduation rate. Dropout rate data, unfortunately, we do not have updated numbers that have been released by the state yet, but as soon as we do, we will provide that to you. And then we look at our senior SAT, senior ACT, our AP, IB, and dual enrollment. And you can see the number tested. So these are the students who want to take the test again. And so they're taking it either at the school level or they're taking it on the Saturday. And you can see the numbers tested and the percentage of those tested. It has gone down in recent years, as you can see that. But I believe in 2020 and 2021, a lot of the colleges, because of the COVID-19, they were not requiring that test. And so I think that may have led to the reduced numbers. And then if you're looking at our ACT, our scores, and as it says on the slide, in 2016, all students started taking ACT, and 2019 reflects where they were able to choose which test. And so the max score, of course, is 36. And then you can see the change in that from the ACT senior averages. And as I said, the 2021 ACT data has not been made available for us just as a dropout data. So once we have that data from 2021, we will include it and let you know. Our SAT senior numbers tested, that has risen and declined. And you can see that our average, we're right there with South Carolina as far as it goes, a little bit lower in 2020 and 2021. But this truly is a student choice, and I know our guidance counselors work with them, especially the students that want to go and want to qualify for some of the life scholarships and the state scholarships. They'll ask them to go ahead and retake the test so that they possibly can qualify for more. So our average score over time, we dipped in 2019 and 2020, but came back in 2021. And then we did improve in our ERW, 5.5%, in our math, 8.3%, and total, 13.7%. Our state improved as well, but the national average went down. And then we look at our advanced placement classes that are available at each one of our high schools. And these were the number of the exams taken. In the next slide, you'll see the number of students that we have, but normally if a student will take one AP class, they may take 2 AP classes a year or sometimes 3 AP classes a year. So these are the number of AP tests that are taken. So last year, out of 839 students, they took 1,407 tests. Percent of passing the AP exam, 52% was a passage rate. And the change in that passing rate, and when we're talking about exams scoring 3 or higher, that's the passing rate. That's what colleges want to see. If the student is going to get college credit for that, that means that they are ready and they took it at that college level. So that's what we were looking at. We did have a decrease in Richland 1 as well as in South Carolina. But again, it still was just a very unusual year for us last year. We look at our AP capstone diplomas. That allows students to develop critical thinking, research, and presentation skills. To receive that, they must earn scores of 3 or higher in AP Seminar, AP Research, and on 4 additional AP exams. And last year, Dreher High School had 23 AP capstone diplomas. And then we look at dual enrollment, and we see the number of students. 272 last year were in dual enrollment classes, and they took 637 classes. So just like with AP or IB, they can take more than one class. And so we really want to see those dual enrollment numbers. And those who scored a C or higher for college and career ready last year was a 74.3%. Then we look at our international baccalaureate. Those taking IB exams were 80 in 2021. The number of exams those 80 students took were 437. The percent of IB exams passed were 81.7%. And the percentage of IB diplomas awarded were 76%. And I know that I went through that quickly. Would you like for Dr. Brizard to go ahead and finish her presentation? All right, Dr. Brizard, you let me know, and I will
Yes, we'll
continue your
take
slide.
questions all at one time. So,
Yes, sir.
Dr. Brizard.
Good evening, Commissioner, Chairman Bishop, Board of Commissioners, Dr. Witherspoon. You will not see any surprises tonight in the presentation that I'm making for you around our next steps. I do want to call attention to the fact that the strategies we've developed to support student success moving forward are strategies that you will find in our district strategic plan. These are the same strategies that I shared with you around our academic recovery plan when we met for our board retreat, and those were embedded in our ESSER 3 plan. So I'm just going to go through those very quickly, go through some highlights for you this evening. In the area of reading, we're providing differentiated support for all of our schools. We're providing job-embedded, personalized, and ongoing professional development for our staff, whether it be teachers, school leaders, curriculum resource teachers, assistant principals for instructions, reading coaches, literacy interventionists, and others. We've strengthened core instruction, and you'll recall from our ESSER 3 discussion a few weeks ago where we told you how we were spending those funds. Part of the way we're spending that money is on providing higher quality curriculum materials to help support a strengthened core instruction. We're also using our reading coaches. We are hiring additional reading interventionists. And we're focused on using, as required by state and federal law, evidence-based interventions. We're using our STAR data for progress monitoring and using our STAR data to help in the implementation of student intervention plans. And then we are also very committed to the MTSS monitoring process. Additionally, we're very proud that our district is committed to inclusive practices. So we're trying very hard to increase the number of students with disabilities who are in the least restrictive environments. And so that's done through an emphasis on co-teaching. And also, we are the largest unified champions district in the state of South Carolina. We've really worked hard to align our resources to make sure that those are evidence-based. We're continuing to use TE21 for practice assessments before SC Ready. We've increased our support for students who are placed in out-of-school suspension so that when those students are able to go back to class, they are not far behind. We've increased our focus on disciplinary literacy in particular, although we're continuing our work on content literacy. We've approached our comprehensive remediation program, or our after-school program, more as an extension of the school day now rather than something that is separate. And we're providing robust summer learning opportunities to extend the school year. When you look at the strategies we've planned for math, they are very similar. Of course, you'll see that instead of reading coaches and interventionists, we have math interventionists, but otherwise the support is the same structure, the same process for providing strategies to support mathematics. And then we have a high focus on providing support in grade 9. We know that ninth grade year is considered the gateway year to high school, and that it is extremely important that our students experience success in ninth grade. So we're approaching this from a couple of different standpoints. One is we're looking at what we can do to support students academically. We also know that if students aren't in school, it's really hard for us to support them. So we're also looking at goals around attendance. So we have begun individual school monitoring of grades with plans for support. We're continuing our efforts around content recovery and extended day. We are expanding our tutoring services, and many of our schools are already planning and implementing Saturday sessions. Interventions for students are based on their STAR data. So students who are in need of urgent intervention based on STAR receive more support than students, for example, who may score on watch, or students who may score needs intervention. We're using the MTSS monitoring process, and we have an intentional focus on why students have not been or are currently not successful, because we know that if we don't know why they aren't being successful, then we may be missing out on the right kinds of strategies to use to motivate them toward greater success. What's implied here, and I hope you are seeing that, is that we know that for students to be successful academically, it is critical that we develop strong relationships with our students so we know them well enough to know what will motivate them toward greater success. And we expanded our summer learning opportunities this past summer and have plans to continue to do that. Additionally, I mentioned that we need our students to be in school, so we've established attendance committees in each of our schools with the purpose of meeting with our middle school staff to discuss the rising ninth grade students who have a history of chronic absenteeism. Meeting with those students, meeting with their parents, developing plans regarding attendance, things like attendance contracts, monitoring the attendance of every ninth grade student, and then having the support of our parent and family engagement specialists and our social workers to provide home visits when it's warranted. And then we are also committed to implementing goals and strategies to reduce the number of students who have to be in out-of-school suspension, and we're continuing our efforts around MTSS monitoring at the high school level as well. And then we have developed several strategies in our district strategic plan, as well as in our academic recovery plan and in the ESSER 3 to support college and career readiness of our students. We are implementing SAT and ACT strategies within core instruction so that a student who may not have decided if they want to take the SAT or the ACT is still being exposed to questions that are given in the format of SAT or SAT, so they will be ready when they decide which assessment they're going to take. We are continuing to provide increased opportunities for dual enrollment during the school year, and you will recall that we provided several dual enrollment opportunities this past summer. So dual enrollment is not limited just to the school year. Students can take dual enrollment courses in the summer as well. In order for us to have students who are career ready, it's really important that we're monitoring the pathways and the courses they're taking to ensure that those courses lead to completer, CTE completer status. And so that's an effort on the part of our school counselors. It's also requires a concerted effort on the part of our CTE department as well as our principals. And then we are trying very hard to increase the numbers and success of our students in AP and IB courses, and we're providing support for student success on what will be the new version of when we know what that looks like. We think it's going to be very similar to what our students have been taking, but we're providing some tutoring support to help students develop those soft skills so they will be adequately prepared for whatever that assessment looks like. Now, I've talked to you about the steps we're taking, but our steps can only be as good as the implementation. And so what makes a difference is not that you have something down on paper, but that you are implementing with fidelity. To do that, we are engaged in a continuous improvement cycle that includes, as you've heard us talk about several times now, deep data dives, the identification of targeted interim goals based on data, having differentiated embedded support by teams, the alignment of resources. We're monitoring professional learning. We're monitoring ongoing progress monitoring, and we're doing that through walkthroughs, instructional rounds at the school level, and formative assessments. The monitoring piece is really important, and the monitoring piece provides an opportunity for school leadership, teachers, for district staff to engage in meaningful conversations about what's working and what's not working. Additional strategies that you will see in our district improvement plan, our district strategic plan, as well as in ESSER and the academic recovery plan, include the expansion of birth to 4. This was goal number 13, but it is certainly nothing that we would consider an unlucky goal. In this case, being number 13 just means that it is a goal that we are committed to. We were one of the first districts in the state to have a goal specific to birth to 4, and we know that if we are going to have students experiencing greater success when they come into elementary school and beyond, we need to ensure that they have high-quality birth to 4 experiences. We have also committed to arts infusion and integration. Many of our schools are engaged in action-based learning. We have greater alignment of our courses to career clusters. We are committed to expanding the work-based learning experiences for our students. As I've mentioned before, we have a commitment and a focus on content and disciplinary literacy. We are very, very proud of the work that's been done with our elementary virtual school program as well as our secondary virtual school program. Those are going very well. And then we are increasing services to our multilingual learners, previously called English language learners, and their families, and we are continuing our work to expand parent and family engagement. And as I said at the outset, this is not anything new. What I've shared with you in terms of next steps just reflects a commitment to us having a focus and sticking with the focus. And we'll be happy to address any questions you may have.
Thank you for the presentation. At this time, Commissioners, I'm pretty sure some of us have questions. This is the time to address administration with any of your concerns or questions. Any commissioners? Okay. Commissioner Devine.
Thank you, Commissioner Bishop. Thank you to staff for this presentation, Dr. Minor and Dr. Broussard. Just a few questions. Going back to, I guess, Dr. Broussard, the third page, strategies to support growth in math. Currently, what math curriculum do we use in K through 5, kindergarten through 5th grade?
Dr. Hackwood, I'm going to let you explain that because we are using different curriculum materials depending on what intervention students may need.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. Currently, K through 5, we use Big Ideas for our primary math resource, and we also have access to Everyday Math, which supports conceptual understanding of math concepts.
Okay. And then as we transition to 6 through 8, and then, of course, 9 through 12, and, of course, that's based off the other core courses needed to graduate high school. Tell me a little bit about 6 through 8. Is there a particular curriculum that we use 6 through 8 as well in math?
It's our adopted curriculum. Ms. Jennings, I don't remember exactly which one it is.
Okay.
I will tell you that we use Math 180 as an intervention, and in our elementary grades, Commissioner Devine, we also use Math in Practice as a supplement, and we use Number Worlds for students who need additional interventions. So we have our core curriculum,
Okay.
as Dr. Hackwood stated, but then we have additional materials that we use to support interventions.
Okay, all right.
Ms. Jennings?
Okay. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
As we move up the grade levels, of course, our textbooks change, and we use a variety of textbooks because they are used as resources.
because we don't have any that are 100% aligned. And we use, we have, with the 6 through 8, we have used Harcourt, we have used other HMH resources as well as a part of our textbook collection.
Okay, and then in these books or these curriculum, for the teachers, and you named the additional things that you all have. So for the teacher and the interventionist, what's the difference in what the core teacher does and then the interventionist? Tell me a little bit about that. If I go to a class and then I have set to go to the interventionist, tell me a little bit about the difference in what's happening between the two.
Well, many of our, as far as the core classes are concerned, many of our textbook resources also have sections or ancillary materials that support intervention. But in addition to that, for those students that may be in tiers 2 and 3, we use really different other resources. We have Alex that supports that. We have Math 180 that we are also implementing this year. We always are looking at other support resources for those students that are in tiers 2 and 3. But as far as our core, we also use the resources that are provided as a part of the instructional textbooks that we receive.
Okay.
And Commissioner Devine, I think it's really important to clarify or to distinguish between resources and curriculum.
Okay.
We write our curriculum materials, and then we pull from those resources to support the instruction that we provide in the curriculum materials. So our curriculum materials are made available to all of our teachers, and those curriculum materials, and that's one of the reasons it's hard to tell you exactly what we're using, because we don't go through a book teaching a book in mathematics. It is selection of materials from a variety of different resources.
Okay, all right, very good. Thank you for that. And then I want to turn to, I'm not sure who this goes to, if it goes to Dr. Witherspoon or what, academic and attendance support. General question, what role does middle school and high school principals have in supporting or reducing school dropout?
Good question. Well, we start actually before middle school, but as was outlined in terms of, the basic premise, to learn, students need to be there. So if there are attendance issues or things that occur, there's a team that works through that, again, whether that's through that MTSS process where they're looking at a variety of information, academic, attendance, if there are discipline issues, and then what strategies, what types of activities need to be done. If there, maybe that's discussion with the student, from teacher conference or what have you, and then getting more directed based on the needs and based on that information. And part of what we've been doing for a number of years now, and it's kind of embedded with our, whether it's trauma-informed practices and so forth, we ask that why. So if there are attendance issues, we want to find out why are there attendance issues. If there's something going on at home, something going on with the student that our other supports need to be brought to bear, or community supports that can answer that why, and then get back to the instruction and all. So that's monitored.
Right.
The supports, again, might be prescriptive to the student based on their needs and what is determined that's needed, so the attendance issues can be addressed.
All right, and then my last question, I'll yield to my other colleagues. So then what do we need to do continue to continue to have low dropout rates across the district?
And that's a very good question. I would say continue to do those things that we have been doing. And I will certainly say that and it's not always equal to, the grad rate is here, and then the dropout rate is the exact opposite.
Correct.
Of that. That's not always the case.
Right?
But as we see our graduation rate increase, we have seen a decrease in there. And again, some of the interventions, and we're fortunate in the district to have a number of interventions. Whether it's Olympia, whether it's Excel, whether it's some of the virtual programming, depending on the needs of the student, again, and where we can match those needs to what we have. I will go back to your attendance question early on. We, a few years ago, and I thank this board, we brought to you the reset program, where we had elementary students suspended or being out because of some severe behavior, some severe trauma, and the like, and we put some things in place, and that reduced some of that out-of-school suspension, which helped and kept those students in school. So one of the things, and hats off to our student support services shop. They're always looking for what else can we do, certainly in our schools. Those support individuals and social workers and parent-family engagement. It is indeed, when we talk about decreasing that dropout rate, increasing graduation rate, and everything in between, it is a team effort. And it is certainly looking at any of those barriers, things that come up, and what can we put in place, or what interventions can we put in place to help a student.
All right. I did not see it on here, but I know it's in one of the resources that we have is mentoring. And I know that's also part of the strategic plan,
Yes.
as all of these line with the strategic plan to keep us focused on the goal of 2024 to get us to where we want to be. And so I say thank you for continuing to keep that in the forefront as we continue to align these strategies to implement the strategic plan that we passed some years ago. And so, again, I will yield to my colleagues, but I have a few more questions regarding some more academic and attendance support. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, any other commissioner? Okay, Commissioner Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll be real brief. Thank you, Dr. Minor and Dr. Brizard, for your presentation on tonight. Dr. Wisdom, I wanted to start first with a general question to you as we look at the things that Dr. Brizard has outlined to us as the driver of the ship, as superintendent. Do you feel that the strategies and the things that has been shared with the board on tonight will move us to the next level? I know we're coming out of a pandemic. And in the presentation, I heard, to continue to monitor and all of that, and I appreciate that. But I know that at some point, after we monitor, we have to move.
Sure.
I know we're using Math 180. We've used Math 180 for a number of years, and I'm just going to use this one as an example. Is it yielding the results that we want to see as a district?
The strategies that have been out, and that's a very good question, strategies that we've outlined and sticking to, oftentimes in education, we're on one path, and then the next year we're on a different path.
Mm-hmm.
And then next year we're on a third path.
Right.
And then we wonder where we are. So what we've been doing in the district these last several years, and you all may recall, we used that, and it hadn't gone anywhere, that fit,
Mm-hmm.
fidelity, intentionality together.
Mm-hmm.
And what we, prior to COVID, and we saw an uptick in our data.
Right.
Prior to COVID.
Right.
We did. Then COVID came, and we are where we are. We also saw prior years and prior presentations where there were changes in tests.
Mm-hmm.
Then there was a change in the scale score. Then there was a change in the curriculum. There were changes in this. And when you have any of those things,
Right.
you remember these conversations we had a few years ago. When you have any of those changes, it has an impact.
Right.
we had all of those changes, and then you throw COVID in there. So, given the demographics of our district, and they are what we are, we love and cherish every student that we have, but when you have some of those changes, there are some steps backwards. And we get our footing, and you know, if there's a change in the test, we kind of don't know how that manifests itself, if you will, until after the students take that test, that end of that year, then we go back, look at the curriculum, what needs to be tweaked and changed. So I give you all of that as background, but, and again, going back to fidelity, we're getting better at implementing things the way they're supposed to be implemented. You know, there's always that give and take of school, you know, okay, you all go and do, and we're being, you know, a little loose on some things and tight on some things. We've gone back over these last few years, and we've shared with schools and support staff and all. We're going back to an old term called non-negotiables.
Right.
Right. Versus preferred, and those, you know, when you do some of that language is, yeah, you can do it if you want to or not or whatever, but non-negotiable means and same with fidelity. If a strategy or if some of these supports are supposed to be done a certain way, we want to be sure they're done a certain way. And we over these years, again, COVID notwithstanding, we were and are getting better at that. And that, you know, again, you heard a few years earlier than that, we kept talking about building capacity. That's how you build capacity.
Right.
Get better at and with more fidelity on those things and strategies that we put in place that we know best practice wise, evidence-based wise, these things will help.
Okay.
So we're getting better
Okay.
at that, and that is helping us.
Okay.
So that's why you hear a lot of, hear the same things and so forth.
Right,
from
and
strategy
I
standpoint.
think, you know, you answered my question. I just, you know, a lot of times when we are discussing data, and then we discuss our next steps, I think one of the important things that we need to include in next steps is we have a lot of programs, and we want to make sure that the programs are effective. And I wasn't picking on Math 180, it's just, you know, it's been around a long time.
Right.
And I just, you know, as I was listening to the presentation, the question popped in my head, is Math 180 yielding the results that we as a district want to see? All of these Alex, and all these different programs, are we seeing
Sure.
from these programs the results? Is it something out there better that we need to explore versus, you know, well, we've been doing this and it's doing pretty good and, you know, we want to stay here? Or is it, you know, well, you know what, they say this program is a little bit better, it's doing this in these districts, which is very similar to our demographics, this, that, and other, because we have to take a lot of things into consideration
Sure.
when it comes to educating the child. The classroom environment is different today than it was when me and Bishop was in kindergarten. In this district. So we know that and you too, Angela, there are adjustments that
Absolutely.
have to be made. And I just thought, you know, as a board, receiving this information on tonight, you know, next steps, hey, let's look at some of these programs. You know, we've been with this program 8 years. Is it really, if we go back and look at the data for the past 8 years, not even considering, well, no, you have to consider the changes to testing. But, you know, how has it impacted or changed what we're doing? One of my concerns is to hear when it's changing. You know, that's what we do in South Carolina. We change tests on kids after they've gotten set in something. Common Core, a perfect example, was thrust on us. Then when we got it under our wing and it started making a difference, you snatched it from us. You know, we've had to go back over the past few years and adjust to a separate testing rubric. And a lot of times that, you know, leads to the teacher burnout. You know, I just want to teach. But a lot of times, as I stated earlier to a group of folks, teachers are spending too much time prepping for tests, state assessments, versus getting in there and getting the child career and college ready, which is a part of the South Carolina high school profile. says nothing about testing the children as much as we are. And I, in seeing this presentation tonight, a lot of assessments that we have to do, because state assessments don't give us the information that we need to adjust the gauge for the child so we can make sure that we're making an impact in the classroom. When, and I guess, Dr. Brazard, you can probably answer this one for me. With them looking at a new assessment for when, what will that look like for the child? Have y'all heard anything? Do you know what to expect? Because I know right now, I think everyone has gotten the current win under their belt. And I know when they change assessments, it's like a culture shock. So will that cause our scores to fluctuate?
Well, I think Dr. Minor can probably
Okay.
speak to that as
Dr.
well.
Minor.
But I believe that whatever culture shock we may experience around that test, everybody else in South Carolina is going to be
Exactly.
experiencing it as well.
Exactly.
because
And
it'll be
that's the
new for
unfortunate
all of
thing.
us.
That's the unfortunate thing. The children end up being the victim in it all. Dr. Minor?
Absolutely, Commissioner Harris. Yes, we have not heard anything about what the new test will be. I know that they are going to want to make sure that it tests the soft skills, just like the WIN piece did, and are our students ready to work? So I believe there will be a request for proposal that will be put out statewide, and then there will be vendors such as ACT and any of the other ones who want to submit, and they'll have a committee ready for that. But right now, I do not have any idea what that's going to look like, but as soon as we do, we definitely will get that information to you.
Sounds good, sounds
Yes, ma'am.
good. And I've got some more questions, but I'll just ask one more so I can yield to my colleagues. We talked about, when we were talking about the ESSA funds, Dr. Witherspoon, doing the online tutoring. And I know tonight we're talking about the after-school tutoring. Are we doing anything to pull back our retired teachers to help with some of this tutoring? Because I know that everywhere, everybody is playing catch-up. Nobody is where they need to be, even if they lie and say they are. They're not. We're all in a pandemic, and we're all trying to come out of it together. So I know, and I've heard this in some calls I've been on, that tutoring and one-on-one time is so important. And I know that in the elementary levels, and I think Commissioner Devine, you might have hit on this a little bit, you have your elementary teachers that will pull a small group out to work with them. Does that small group stuff happen, Dr. Brazard, at the middle and the high school level when we hone in on a group of kids that might be struggling in the area? And I'll use an example. If a kid is struggling in fractions, the teacher knows that, well, half of the class is where they need to be. But I've got these 10 or 12 kids here that I might need to do something extra. Our teachers employed or empowered to do after-school tutoring sessions with these students. What do we do differently to make sure that those students that are not where they need to be get caught up in a smaller setting? Because children learn better in smaller settings. That's one of the things that the board, we pride ourselves on, Dr. Witherspoon. We appreciate it that we've asked for the smaller classroom size. A lot of times people don't understand why we have a lot of vacancies, but the vacancies is because we're trying to render smaller class sizes. What does that look like for the middle and the high schooler that is struggling? Do they get those breakout sessions?
So one of the things that you'll recall is we put in our ESSER plan, we put in math interventionist and literacy interventionist, and those are at the middle school level as well. And we have specific interventions at the high school level. You mentioned Math 180, Read 180 is one we've had for years and years. Math 180, we just piloted a couple of years ago.
Right.
But I think it's really important when we think about interventions like Read 180 and Math 180 to remember that those interventions are evidence-based. So we choose them because they have a strong probability of helping students in targeted areas. And so one of the reasons they're successful is because in a Read 180 class, you wouldn't have more than 15 students who are pulled for extra help in addition to what they would get in the regular classroom, almost like double dosing.
Right.
But the software is adaptive, so it adapts to what the student needs. So that deficiency that they may have in a particular area of reading, or if it's a math intervention, it is targeted to help address the needs of the student in those areas of deficiency.
Okay.
We also work during our intervention time to try to figure out how we can help accelerate students.
Okay.
And another thing that I think is really important is that even though we may pull students out for some interventions and for tutoring and those kinds of things, what matters most is what happens in core instruction. So that's one of the reasons that small group instruction is seen as such a vital part of what we do in regular core classrooms too.
Okay.
So you should see within the regular classroom, teachers pulling small groups of students who may have similar kinds of deficiencies or similar needs for enrichment, pulling those students together to work with them for short periods of time.
Okay. So do we offer enrichment hours, or, in college, our college students are required, whether you're at the top of your game or not, to go through tutoring. Are we requiring any mandatory type tutoring?
Yeah,
Dr.
one of
Witherspoon?
I'm sorry, Commissioner. One of the, Commissioner Harris, apologize. One of the things Dr. Broussard and I were in a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and some things were presented to us, and not just us, but we'll be working with our schools, primarily high school, but probably middle, and some scheduling to what you're saying.
Okay.
In terms of how could we put some of that time, or how can the schedule look a little different,
Right,
so that could possibly be built into a student's day,
right.
with perhaps some augmented staffing by perhaps a college student or retiree. I mean, we're still working, it's
got you.
early in our, again, planning and evaluation, but we are looking at just that
Okay.
piece. It's interesting, you should bring that up. And how we can build in some of this into a student's schedule, and they still, able to get those courses they need and
Right.
so forth, but to continue to work on some of those skills
Okay.
As they move forward.
And I appreciate that. And Mr. Chairman, I'll say this comment, then I'll yield to one of my colleagues. It is showing right now across the country that when you think about it, I think it was Dr. Smalls that talked the other night about, you got to think about it, they left us, they were in the 7th grade, and they came back 9th grade.
Yeah.
That hit me.
Right.
You're right, this kid is transformed from middle school to a whole nother arena.
That's right.
High school is totally different. So, the conversation that I was having with some other states was about how we've got 11th and 12th graders that really lost 2 years. So what are we going to do? Because our responsibility is to make sure that before they leave us, Mr. Chair, they're caught up in where they need to be. So, in listening to that conversation, the purpose of the conversation is to think about my district. Okay, how do we look at this differently in Richland 1 to say, okay, we've got some seniors right now that we're playing catch up. The last time we had them in a classroom was 10th grade. Okay, they're adjusting to being back face to face. So will we require, as we get close to the end of the year, we've got to do some mandatory tutoring to make sure that we set you up, but we set you up for success and not failure, because what some colleges are saying is that group of freshmen that have come in, you can tell they've been in the pandemic, is what they're saying. Yeah. And that was the purpose of the call, was the imbalance between college, first year freshmen, and kids coming out of high school. So the discussion was, how do we merge that? How do we catch up for lost time, pretty much? And one of the things that I heard, I believe, was Mississippi or Alabama talk about how they are implementing tutoring and making it mandatory. You choose when you come, but you come. If it's either before school, come at lunchtime, or teacher can record a session and you can play it later, whatever, after school, even Saturday school. And that's just my concern as I look at this data. I know that, a lot of this, the grad rate and a lot of things, Dr. Witherspoon, will be impacted by our decisions going forward. I just, would ask that we look at how we catch up those that are going to leave us first. And I'm not knocking what we do in at elementary, middle, don't think that's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we've got a generation of young people that are going to graduate in June that really lost 2 years of seat time in a pandemic. What are we doing to get them caught up that when they leave us, we can all stand on that stage and smile and say, they're ready, like we've been doing, from before, because we know the pandemic has impacted that. So I just wanted to share that piece of information with you all. Mr. Chair, I'm a yield. Thank you.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner King.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop. I want to go back to Mr. Devine's, the dropout rate, because we've been, I want to understand, first of all, what the numbers are, to be sure, right? So so we don't have the numbers for 2020, 2021. Well, that makes sense, but 2019, 2020, it's 1.6, is that right? So is that a percentage? So for every 100 kids, we have a 1.6 student that drop out? Is that how I'm reading this?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
What they do is they will look at students who came in within that four-year cohort, like they look for the graduation rate, and then they will look, did they go somewhere? Did they transfer to adult ed?
Right.
Did we lose them altogether? And that's where they come up with that percentage, looking at the denominator and the numerator based on those numbers, and if we can find the students and
Right.
and where they've gone.
Okay. Well, I think that this is probably one of the best numbers that we have. I mean, it's remarkable. Given the complexities of our student populations, we sometimes even have foreign students that go back to their countries, and we can never get in touch with them, right? So
Exactly.
that is to be commended, and I know that the principals and their staff have worked really, really hard for that, so that is definitely a positive. What I worry is that we spend a lot of time, and I see a lot of conferences that talk about dropout. Well, in our case, we're doing pretty darn well, so I really want to focus on something else. And Dr. Witherspoon, that is, I want us to focus more on the checkout rates. Just like Dr. Broussard was saying, is that our kids check out. They do, and it's probably before 9th grade. And this is really where we need to catch them, because they've given up or they're discouraged. And so they're struggling. And I think that the more, of course, we promote them, because we don't really have much of a choice, and then they get to a point where they're like, I'm never going to make it. So I really want to focus on the summative, which we all know how many flaws it has, right? It is one day, sometimes kids don't feel good, et cetera, but we got to look at that, right? And then I'll talk about, I'll ask questions about the formative assessments. But frankly, we've been talking over the years about those bubble kids, right? They're really the ones that we've been really focusing on, because they're right on the cusp, or that's what we say. But when I look at this chart for 2021, we look at the percentage of approaching, meet, and exceed. I want to stay positive, of course. But if you don't meet, you don't meet. And when I look at combining the does not meet and approaches, we have 70% kids in ELA that don't meet this. That don't meet the standards. And in math, it's 75%. That's really concerning to me, because that's where it starts. And we had a great graduation rate, and that's fantastic. But I have a hard time reconciling, kids who are really struggling in elementary and middle with reading and math, and yet they get a high school diploma, and I'm not really sure they're really ready. And it sort of shows. So that's really where I worry the most. I do know that one of the great numbers that I had looked, that I wish we would look even more is in the area of Dr. Hagwood, early childhood. We've done really, really great progress, but that's where it starts. Ms. Harris was talking about, we do have a number of percentage of kids that are coming midstream in their schooling, and they come in and out. But I also would like to understand what's the percentage of kids that we have that are, I'll label them hours from start to finish, and see how they grow. So, but I'm really concerned about those numbers. And when, Mr. Devine was talking about the strategic plan, because, what's our job is to make sure that our kids have the basics of reading, literacy, and numeracy, and science, and social studies. But in our strategic plan for 2019-2020, in ELA, the target was 71%. We were at 67%. So we were not that far, but not quite. But then this year, the target was 74, and we at 59, and that's 15% drop. That concerns me. We have to look at those numbers. Math is this year 2021. The actual is 49, should be at 68. That's a 19% difference, and I think we really need to talk about that. So let me ask just a couple questions. Probably Dr. Minor. A couple of things I didn't quite get. So on the number of assessments taken for ACT and SAT, that's because they were optional, right?
Yes, ma'am. In 2016, it was everybody had to take it.
Right.
And then the proviso came out that it was a choice for whatever they wanted to take, if they wanted to take ACT or SAT, or if they didn't want to take it at all.
Okay. So the change, I know you guys do a lot of deep data dive. Are the students that tend to choose to take the test, are they our higher flyer kids or not really? Do we know? We got to know that in some ways, right?
I don't believe we have that information available now, but that's something that we possibly could talk about.
I think that's an interesting, maybe that's an interesting question to ask. Who is taking those numbers? Those tests. Because if you've got much lower performing kids taking them, they're not going to score as much. Sort of need to know. Dr. Broussard, do you want to say something?
I think that's an interesting question. I think if you look at the research around who takes SAT and ACT, you would find that it is not always the student who is the highest performer necessarily. Many parents, in fact, insist their child take the SAT or the ACT, and it may and sometimes students decide they want to take it because their friend is taking it, and so there are many reasons that students take the SAT and ACT, but it is not always because that student is the student who has taken all the prerequisite courses that are recommended the child take before they take the test. And sometimes they take the test so they can see what it's like this time, so they'll be better prepared for it the next time.
Okay. And, okay, let me go back to, and this is, Dr. Witherspoon, this is, I went back today and looked at a Spotlight one that you did with Ms. York and Dr. Broussard on May 7th, and I thought it was a really, really good, really good layout of the challenges of COVID and sort of the preparation to address those challenges. But mostly what piqued my attention was what I've, brought forth for a number of years are the accent was on the formative assessments. And we tend to struggle with the summative assessments for reasons ranging from the test changes and the kids can have a bad day and, things like that. And I get it, but but then we have to look at formative assessments because I think as a school board member, I am interested in the growth of our children. My community is interested in knowing that Richmond One as an institution, as a governmental institution, has the duty of providing services that will give ammunition to our kids to be successful. And if they don't test well or whatever on summative assessment, we also have a duty to tell their parents and our community that even though certain kids are not where the tests want them to be, we can prove that there's been growth. So my understanding from watching that and just listening to y'all and knowing what you do all year round, those formative assessments and those deep data dive, I'm interested for the board to have a picture of what the story tells there. That's really what we need to look at.
We look at formative assessment is assessments for learning. Your summative assessments are termed as assessments of learning. When you take a formative assessment and turn it into an assessment of learning, it's not formative anymore. And we have shown in this district previously and currently, and again, COVID notwithstanding, that we do indeed grow our kids. I'll take the point you just made with where our kids are, coming in. We know what the KRA data, our kindergarten readiness data says. And a child can grow from there to 12th grade. So that's not a stretch to say, well, they scored here in elementary school, so how could we have a graduation rate at 85.8%? That can and does and indeed happen. That there is value add as students matriculate through the district. The formative that being said, formative assessments that we have, and then we've looked at again prior to, I shared some information also, was a couple State of the Districts ago that talked about the number of schools that met or exceeded growth goals at elementary and middle level relative to the state. So there can be growth. That growth information is shared. That data is cascaded, certainly by the district, certainly by schools and their data conversations and those strategies. But we have to be careful, if we're using a screwdriver like a hammer, and then, well, it's a screwdriver. But we do share that information. We do use those formative data tools, again, if there are particular objectives or certain areas of the curriculum that students need support in. That's what we use that data for, is who needs certain interventions, who needs tutoring on what, this item versus that item, this standard versus that standard, and so forth. So that's something we do continue to do. I would just caution, if we use formative data and formative information in a summative manner, that goes down a path that doesn't help teachers, that you can have those certain instructional conversations, either in the classroom level, school level, grade level. What are we looking like, third grade or any grade? But I think we have been able to show our parents and show the public, if you will, that we have again, and we do indeed move our students relative to when they come to us. And use the analogy quite often, we may not be here, but if students come here and we get them to here, it can't be enough to just say, look, you didn't get them here, but we moved them from here to here. Versus, a student walking in here, and which is already there, and so forth. So, do at times our students have further to travel, so to speak? Yes. Do we move students, and do we strive to move students from where they are further? Yes. But again, are we going to, we strive for that? We absolutely do. Through the summative work, through the deep data dives and so forth, and those strategies that have been laid out, and as I shared earlier, we're honing in, and we're getting better at that. Appreciate the work, certainly, of our teachers, our students. We did a parent piece a few years ago. We're looking at how we bring that parent piece back to help in this regard. But I certainly would say this community, we show growth. That's evident.
Dr. Witherspoon, so we are in agreement in this, that it's where the flag is for all, right, is the universal flag. It's not necessarily fair to the kids because they come at all different levels. We completely agree with that. Who gets that growth information? If I'm a parent and I know that my kid is tested at the beginning of the year, in the middle of the year, and before testing.
Yeah, that information is shared.
But so why isn't that shared with us so we know and we can translate that? There is growth. I mean, I don't have any growth information. What I'm looking at here is
shared with that growth information.
Is purely summative.
Yes, correct.
And based on this, 70% of our children do not meet the standards. That's not the story I want to tell. But we're judged on this, and everybody's judged on the same scale. And I want a better story, and I've been saying this for years.
Well, I would appreciate if you go out and let's share that same story.
But I don't have anything to tell. I don't know what the growth looks like.
And we share that with, again, state of the district, beginning of the year, and all, and that's shared with the respective students. The schools share that information. Again, sometimes that growth data lags this information as well. We don't always get it at the same time.
Okay, so you said it's been shared. I'd love to receive a copy because I don't remember what the chart looks like of growth. Is it a chart that we've?
Well, I'll give some data again. This is what was given at the See if I can pull this up. Again, on the 1819, in 1920, there were no tests, and then we have 2021, but this was lag. So in 1819, 86% of the Richland 1 elementary schools met or exceeded the state average in growth in ELA. 69% of the Richland 1 elementary schools met or exceeded the state average growth in math. 100% of the Richland 1 middle schools met or exceeded the state average growth in ELA, and 78% of the Richland 1 middle schools met or exceeded the state average growth in math. That was based on the 1819 ready data.
1819.
Okay, any other questions? Any other questions for any other? Commissioner Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll be brief. I just had one last follow-up question and then a statement. Dr. Brazard, you talked about the Birth to 4 program, the program that we do with the hospitals with those students that are in our footprint. Do we stay in touch with those parents as it relates to the child being accepted into our Head Start program and all of that?
So what I was describing is our new Thrive Richland effort.
Okay.
That's a part of it. It's not all, but that's
Okay.
a major part of it. And with Thrive Richland, we're keeping the parents engaged. And so we have play sessions with little children, and the parents participate as well, so we can model for parents how to really help their children be more successful.
Okay.
We also provide coaching services to some of the private daycare providers, so that the students who do not come to our pre-K 3 and 4-year program have a better chance of being successful when they come into our program. So it is providing resources for parents, providing training for parents, modeling for parents, providing training for the instructional assistants in our pre-K programs, as well as the individuals, the daycare providers in our footprint who will participate in courses with us. And I've forgotten the number now, but I believe it's something like about 90 micro-credentials that have been earned around Birth to 4.
Okay.
And so, and that's a really important question, because you were talking, Mrs. King, about where the flag is. The percentage of students who have been coming to us ready for kindergarten based on the KRA has been somewhere between 29 and 35% recently. So when only 29 to 35% of your students come to you ready for kindergarten, you have to work really, really hard to help that 70% or so catch up, and to grow those students. But that's what we're good at. And we don't just stop growing them in elementary school. You mentioned earlier, Mrs. Harris, that you didn't want us to wait until the end of the senior year to try to catch these students up. We've not been doing that. Our summer program, this past summer, we had more middle and high school students than we have ever had participating in our summer program, because we were trying to accommodate lost instructional time. And so we are good at growing our children, but we take every child where he or she comes to us. And right now, we have a lot of students who have been coming to us not ready for kindergarten.
Absolutely. And Dr. Brazard, that speaks to my comment, Mr. Chair, and I think Dr. Witherspoon said something that's very important. And I'm gonna just say how I feel about this. The educational system in the state of South Carolina is flawed. We're trying to hit a moving target every day. That's why I don't go and jack nobody up about X, Y, Z, and the third and the fifth. The teachers' jobs are harder than they've ever been. The pandemic made it 10 times as hard. But what also makes it hard is when parents don't do their part. Sometimes, you know, I talk to legislators all the time. We talk about gun violence and bringing guns to school, and you got lawmakers that tell you, well, what do you want me to do? I'm doing the best I can. I say, okay, so kid brings gun to school to get 365 days home, and that's it, bam. And everything is thrust on the district. And everybody expects the district Commissioner Myers to be the shining star. Everybody expects the teachers to wave this magic wand over these children's head that are dealing with so much social and emotional stuff that they come to school with, Mr. Chair, and have to unload. A teacher has to comb through all that. I live in a real world. I grew up in 29044, and I'm going to tell you, I grew up in this district, and the challenges are real, and I thought they were real when I was in school, Eva. They're worse now than they ever were. But teachers somehow still manage to navigate through all of that, get to that child, and start working and dealing with the child. I don't knock assessments, but I think that we're assessed out. We are going above and beyond, and everybody wants to measure success by a test score. That's not even the profile of a South Carolina graduate. I think that the profile should be aligned to what they're expecting our schools to do, but you don't see that. So, you know, when you grow the child, and that was something I remember Dr. Witherspoon saying this to us, Aaron, about 5 years ago, we see growth. We see growth. I stopped looking at the scores, and I started seeing growth, that this child, as you said, Dr. Brazard, so eloquent just now, these children come to us behind. We have children that come to us not even potty trained. See, these are the things that people don't realize, that schools have to care and turn into the mom and the dad and the social worker and that's why so many teachers are burnt out, because you don't just get to love on the baby and teach them. You got to be the second mom. Some got to be the first mom. And it's so unfortunate, but I won't sit at this desk and make it look like Richland 1 is not growing the child, because they are. I see growth. I talk to children in this district all the time across this district. I see growth. I know what's happening on college campuses where folk are floored what these kids are doing in college because of growth. So, you know, I'm not to sit here and say what's not happening, because great things are happening in Richland 1. We see it, Aaron. We see it every day. The data showed it. We want to see the growth. Dr. Minor got up there and talked about the growth when she gave us the assessment. We have scores that beat the state average. Our grad rate beats the state average, but there are some scores that beat the state average as well. But until this General Assembly comes together, and they talk about reforming education, Dr. Witherspoon, but until we have a real discussion about what the issues are and this minimally adequate education stuff that we want to provide to our children, then we're going to continue to try to hit a moving target that nobody's going to hit, Jamie, because the target keeps moving. And as Vince Ford would always say, are we for kids or are we kidding? Sometimes I think we're kidding as a state. And the first thing we want to throw out here is assessments, assessments, assessments. And this magic wand that these teachers are supposed to wave over these children's head. We've got to be realistic here and remember that we are in a pandemic, and even in a pandemic, Dr. Witherspoon, you grew our graduation rate. You grew scores. We see it. We see it, the children see it. We just got to continue to do what we're doing, and if we've got a program or something that is not effective, let's pluck it up. Let's find something new. Let's listen to our teachers, you know, who are there front and center with the children. They know our children better than us because they're in the classroom with them all the time. Earlier, we were talking about our chat with the chair, and just that little bit of time we spend with the kids, we learn a whole lot about what happens in middle school, because they, and even you know this, they tell it all. They tell us everything. Don't want to get off the call. But we appreciate that as board members, but at the same time, we see growth, and what we have to understand is we are all in this boat together. And some can be with the bucket taking the water out so the ship don't sink, and some taking the bucket and putting the water back in the boat. We're on the ship together. And I think that we just got to continue, Mr. Chair, to work and strive together, give the superintendent and his staff the support that they need to grow the child, because you're going to see some changes as it relates to education in the state of South Carolina. There has to be. It's a hard conversation right now that's being held. And you know, I'm fortunate enough to be on that panel with Ms. Spearman and some others on, is that tomorrow, Jamie?
Thursday.
That's Thursday, and I look forward to it. I'm glad that I was the sacrificial lamb to talk about education in the state of South Carolina, because I can talk about what's happening right here in the Capitol and how we are growing the child and we're setting standards and expectations that are not even obtainable. When a child comes to you behind, just let that marinate for a little while. Child comes to you behind, but by the end of the year, you expect that child to be on grade level. No, you've got to grow the child. You got to make up for lost time. I'm gonna leave that right there, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
All right, any other comments or questions? Commissioner Devine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner Harris, for those words. We appreciate that, and we know your passion and your commitment to education and throughout, not just Richland One, but throughout the state of South Carolina, and we appreciate you putting forth that for us. Just a few more questions for staff, and then I'll move on out of the way. Dr. Witherspoon, or to whomever this goes to, going back to the dropout rate again, I think this is National Dropout Prevention Month, October is National Dropout Prevention Month, so I think this is good timing that you all presented this information. And I'm asking a question. If I look at this rate, I think this is the lowest rate that we've had in history, and I know we're lower than the state average, so can we get some confirmation around that?
We'll check on that.
Yes, sir. So thank you all for those strategies and intermittent things that we do to keep all of our students in school, because we want to make sure that they do graduate from Richland One, either college and or career and military ready. Dr. Witherspoon, I'm not sure again who this goes to, but it kind of goes to some of the strategies. And Ms. Harris kind of mentioned it in regards to some of the things that our teachers do, and we talk about Richland One exhaled last week, and which I know staff is appreciative of that. I'm not jumping to the board report, but this kind of goes with the strategies to support growth as we talk about our staff. When we do lesson plans, general question, who are the lesson plans for? Are they for the teachers, or are they for the leadership team, for the administration? Typically, who are the lesson plans for? Are they for the students, substitutes? Who are the lesson plans for?
They actually serve multiple purposes.
Okay.
So all of our teachers have substitute lesson plans available, emergency plans in the event something happens that they get sick in the middle of the night, and what they have planned for the next day would not be something that a substitute could carry out. Then there are emergency plans for that. The lesson planning, though, is really, first and foremost, it's for the teacher, to help the teacher plan the lessons so that, A, the teacher is not going into the classroom without the resources they need, without thinking about how to present the content to students in the best way, without thinking about how to group the students. Part of the lesson planning is looking at deficiencies or areas of enrichment that students may need and deciding how you're going to group the students for instruction during a period of time. So it is first and foremost to support the teacher's planning and to ensure that the teacher has every opportunity to be as effective as possible in the classroom. But it's also a great tool for school leadership to use, so that as they have their PLC meetings with teachers, for example, and quite frankly, in many of our schools, our CRTs sit with our teachers and plan with them together. So third grade teachers may sit together and plan together so that they are staying at about the same place, that they're helping hold each other accountable for pacing so they can share instructional materials, assessment items, and so forth. So it's first and foremost for the teacher, but it's also for colleagues on the team that are that benefit from the rich experiences that different members of a team bring to the table. But it's also a great way for a principal to monitor instruction. It helps us as a district team when we go in to observe if we have access to the lesson plan, so we can see if what the teacher intended to have occurring is actually occurring. Gives us some ideas about how we can better support the teachers as well. So it serves a number of people, but the most important thing is to help the teacher think through the process of planning instruction.
Good deal. Okay, all right. Thank you, Dr. Broussard. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All
I
right,
appreciate it.
any other questions? Okay, Commissioner Clyburn.
Hi, Dr. Broussard. So I'm not sure exactly who this would be directed to, but my question is in reference to the Parent and Family Engagement program, which I think is a great, great program. My family engagement person is very active in our school at my children's elementary school, so I have a very positive outlook on that program. But I'm wondering about the growth or the the actual expansion, of the program that you said is one of the changes or strategies that we're doing, for
Sure.
this upcoming year or the current year. Specifically, those changes, is it the increasing or the new assignments of new specialists, or is it, dealing with the added resources, that they're able to implement, as they engage with families? And, how is that, what is
That's
the
a great
process?
question, Commissioner Clyburn, and the reason it's called an expansion, number one, is because we're expanding the number of parent and family engagement specialists. You may remember that we put funding into ESSER to provide, I believe it's 4 more parent and family engagement specialists. But we've also been talking about how we expand the services, and one of the ways we've done that already is by having our parent and family engagement specialist engaged in our Thrive Richland program. So an example of this is when we provided training for some of our staff through the Parents as Teachers model, we also trained some of our parent and family engagement specialists because we want to have them better equipped to help the families of young children, because when you have elementary children, let's say you had a baby at home as well. So when that parent and family engagement specialist is providing services to your elementary student and to you, that parent and family engagement specialist would also be equipped to help out with your child and to hopefully bring that child into the Thrive Richland program and you. And so it's an expansion of the different kinds of services. We're always looking for how we can use our parent and family engagement specialist to really optimize the services we're providing to our families.
Okay.
Another thing that we did was we've considered how we can have more parent and family engagement specialists who are multilingual so they can help us serve our ESOL families.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, hearing none. Dr. Witherspoon, thank you and your staff for the 2021 accountability presentation. We will now move to Office of the Board. This is the time in 9.01, the board report, where any one of our commissioners can share some activity or something that they would like to bring before this board from their desk. At any time, any commissioners can speak up. All right, Commissioner Devine.
Thank you, Commissioner Bishop. Again, thank you for this opportunity. Just real quick, I want to say this past weekend, the C.A. Johnson Hornets, where we are tonight, played their homecoming game and subsequently won, ranked second in the region. We're proud of them and thank them for what they've done this past year and the growth that we've seen for this team and for this academic institution. That's number one. And yours truly served as Grand Marshal this year for the parade, along with Councilwoman Tamika Isaac Devine. And so we're appreciative of the school and making that happen, and along with Troy Belton, who is also a graduate of the school, who gave back to our football program and has really helped us tremendously to get us where we are on today. Again, Dr. Witherspoon, you're going to mention about Red Ribbon Week in your report?
You can go right ahead, sir.
No, if you're going to do it,
Go
yours,
right
I'll yield. So I'm sure that you'll do it. So that concludes my report right now, Mr. Bishop. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I do apologize for, I attended a homecoming game as well. And I was glad to see that two sister schools playing, 0 incidents. Great night, packed with people. But I want to congratulate Lower Richland High School on their win over our friends, Keenan Raiders, 62-12.
All right.
And we're excited for them. They're on their way. Great program, as Mr. Devine talked about, Johnson. Dr. Witherspoon, I don't know where Coach Metz is, but seeing some really great things happening in our athletics. And I just want to, we can always talk about what ain't happening, but I just want to tell Mr. Metz and his staff, job well done in what we are seeing at the fields in athletics. But very good game, Mr. Bishop. You know the Raiders and Diamonds are very close. But great game, Ms. Clyburn as well.
Great game.
Great game. But I also wanted to share that prior to the meeting, I did receive a call, Dr. Witherspoon. We have another church that has donated another 18,000 masks to Richland 1. So we will need to arrange a pickup from them. But just want to say again publicly to all of the churches and business partners how much this district appreciates you making sure that masks are available for our children, even though, federal judge ruled that we were able to continue our mask mandate. We certainly want to thank my colleagues for being courageous. You're talking about courageous leadership, but I want to thank my 6 colleagues that sit at this desk and took a vote to uphold a mask mandate to protect our children and our faculty and our staff. And as time unfolded, the lawsuit that came about, federally speaking, did play in our favor, that we were really doing our jobs, and that is to protect our children. But just wanted to say publicly how much we appreciate all of these businesses and churches that are continuing to donate to our district. And then, Dr. Witherspoon, I wanted to also thank TD Bank, who has adopted Richland 1 as well, wanted to get involved, and I believe they have adopted Weber's food program down there. They've supplied some things to the students, and here recently, they're now doing a hygiene pantry for us, hopefully going to be at our high school and our 2 middle schools in the Lower Richland community. So I just wanted to publicly thank, I believe she's one of the vice presidents who's a Richland 1 graduate, for looking out for the district that made her who she is today, and her wanting to give back all the way from Greenville. So just wanted to publicly thank Ms. Wilson for her work and what she's doing there at TD Bank. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Anyone else would like? Okay, Commissioner King.
I don't have a report. I just would like to have at the next board meeting a conversation with the board and Dr. Witherspoon. This relates to one of the public participation. I do think that it's time to open up the meetings, maybe with restricted attendance, but I think it's important because this is a public meeting, maybe not a public of the meeting, meeting of the public, but still, we need to start opening. And then Dr. Witherspoon, I had a few parents reach out to me to see if, the school level, if there could be some ease of restrictions. Their parents working with the PTO and on various clubs and all that need to get into the school to, let's say, organize banquets, et cetera. And so if some restrictions could be lifted on there, and they would, of course, work with the principals and the administration in the schools, they'd like to see that, a little bit of an easing of the restrictions. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Commissioner Myers.
I also would like to state that I had an opportunity to work with some elected official at the press conference this morning at 10 a.m. at the meeting church. Just taking some opportunity to let Richland County know how important it is to get vaccinated and how it does trickle down to the kids as well. So it's very important just to take some time out and just to encourage the community to just get vaccinated. That's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Myers. All right. Seeing no one else, no other comments? All right. Well, thank you so much, Board, for letting us know of your activities, even the Lower Richland Keenan game.
Right.
All right. 9.02, second reading approval of policy GCE, staff recruitment, presented by Attorney Williams.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Dr. Witherspoon, the administration recommends approval of policy GCE for second reading approval, staff recruitment. The administration so recommends.
You heard the recommendation of administration. What's the pleasure of the board?
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Devine, second by Commissioner Myers. Question or discussion? Commissioner King.
Yes, I'd like to reiterate my comments and see if there's a way. This was really stemmed from a assistant coach's situation, and I'm really worried that we're just making a blanket decision that will really restrict our recruiting efforts and opportunities for young adults to learn skills and to give back. I really wish we could carve out some exceptions maybe for assistant coaches, and we could include language that would say that they could be less than 21 years old, but would have to have supervision by a head coach at all times. I think that would be a better way to look at this versus making just a blanket policy on the age of 21. So.
All right. No other discussion? We'll now cast our vote. It is 5 yeas, 1 nay. The ayes have it. We're now moving down to item 9.03, which is 2021, 2022 board, superintendent, district goals, which are being presented by me, Mr. Bishop, Chairman Bishop. I want to read these in for everyone's hearing and hopefully get a motion to accept these goals. Goal number 1 is review and update strategic plan annually. Goal number 2, take strategic actions to expand engagement with community agencies, partners whose services contribute to social, emotional, mental, and/or physical well-being of the whole child. Goal number 3, complete cognia reaccreditation process. Goal number 4, take strategic action to enhance middle school sports. Goal number
That would be 5, sorry.
5,
Misnumbered.
which is take strategic action to develop culturally sensitive educational programs and opportunities to meaningfully engage parents representing the diverse communities in the district. Goal number 6, take strategic action to enhance adult and community education services. Goal number 7, take strategic action to support all district goals related to student achievement with special emphasis on supporting the success of populations identified in ESER 3 as being disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. And finally, our last goal, number 8, take strategic action to expand retention of staff efforts so as to ensure continuity of culture, expectations, and practices. Would like to entertain a motion at this time to accept these as the goals for the board, superintendent, and district goals.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I move that we accept the goals, is that 1 through 8 supposed to be?
1 through 8, sir.
I'm sorry. Yeah, goals 1 through 8 as presented as the board superintendent district goals dated October 26, 2021.
Is there a second?
I second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Devine to accept all 8 of these goals, and second by Commissioner Clyburn. Question or discussion? Okay, is that in hand? Commissioner King.
So, my first question, Mr. Chair, is, would it be possible to put this on hold to the next meeting since we have one board member that is going to join us? I mean,
I don't think it could be possible.
why not?
I think it's just been moved and properly second.
Well, that's fine, but I mean, we're -1.
It's been moved and
on
properly
the-
second.
No, I understand that.
Okay.
So I move that we postpone this so that the board, when it's complete,
Is there a
gives.
second? Is there a second? That's for lack of a second.
So we don't want the new board member, whoever it's going to be, to have any input in this? I mean, where does collaboration come in?
It's been presented
No,
tonight.
I understand that, but I want to
And
understand
let
why
me
we
say-
wouldn't
Let
collaborate.
me say this, Commissioner King. There's a lot of things on the agenda tonight that is going to be assessed and measured all year.
No.
So this is just not
But, wait a
one main
minute.
item
Okay.
that we have to
So
wait on
this
the
says
new
board
board member for.
superintendent district goal. When was the board consulted ever on these goals?
Excuse me?
When did the board have a discussion to establish goals?
When we sat here and talked with him about the last assessment.
No, we did an evaluation last time.
Yes,
We
yes.
did not talk about new goals. So I think it merits a discussion on the goals. Because this is the superintendent presenting to us his goals, but see, we're the board. We represent a community that wants to see some goals, and so I want to know, when does the board discuss the goals that it wants for the district? I mean, the board governs and sets the tone. When does that happen? Because it says here, board, superintendent, district goals.
Most of these goals you see here that you're reading came out of discussion with us from last time we had an assessment. Any
They-
other comments from anyone else?
Mr. Bishop, I'm not finished. We did not. We did an evaluation on this on the past year. This is for the future, and there was no discussion. So I want, Ms. Wilson, I would like for that to be reflected, that the board did not discuss any of the 2021-2022 goals for the superintendent of the district. The second thing that I want to ask on these is, none of these are measurable. So if I take number one,
I would argue
review
that they
and
are.
update strategic plan annually, well, how is that a goal since it's part of the job? And then another one, number three, complete Cognia reaccreditation process. Do we have a choice? How is that a goal?
It's being measured, so it's a goal.
What is measured? Where's the measurement?
It could be met, not met.
No, it says complete. Complete the reaccreditation process, so it means that potentially it's not going to be complete? Is that the measurement?
Excuse me, say that again?
It says the goal is, the verb is complete. Cognia reaccreditation process. So does that mean that there's an option to not complete it?
It could not be completed, yes, it could. If it fails as a goal, that is a possibility. But it's also something that's very critical that we are making sure is a goal to get completed.
Well, of course it will be
Okay.
completed. We don't have a choice.
You do have a choice. We're just making sure that it's a priority.
Is the choice for the district to not get reaccreditation?
And listen, you can not meet it or meet it, but we're going to make sure we meet it because it's a priority.
And then, so what I see here is take strategic action. So where is the measure? So all the superintendent has to do is take strategic action, and those actions don't have to result in anything as long as something's been taken.
Dr. Witherspoon, would you care to elaborate on number 4?
Sure. When you see board members, take strategic action, there are things, steps, actions, strategies, tactics that have to be done. Those things can indeed be measured. To what degree and to what extent and so forth and so on. So those things can indeed be measured. And I would also emphasize that, these get cascaded through and across the organization. So they're embedded in these steps that are actionable, that can be measured, are action steps that are taken from the classroom, from the school, again, up and down the organization. So those things can indeed be measured. But to get to, and we talk quite often about leading and lagging indicators. A test score, for example, that's a lagging indicator. There's all that goes into doing that. But if we say, that we're going to get here at the end of the year, first of all, we're 2 months into the school year. So there are things that we need to do and have to do. And as the chair indicated, these are items that, based on numerous discussions, feedback from the board, that you all have given and said, hey, these are areas that we should take a look at or prioritize in addition to all or any of the day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, semester by semester things that we do. So they're the action steps, if you will, they're critical to any aspect of moving an organization forward. But to say, okay, we're going to be here, what are those action steps? What are those things, concrete and otherwise, do we do in order to get there? Again, aligned to the strategic plan, aligned to ESSER, aligned to those strategies, those things, our academic recovery plan, and so forth. They're all aligned to those items, and those action steps can indeed be measured.
Thank you, Dr. Witherspoon.
I appreciate that, Dr. Witherspoon, but a goal has to be measurable. One goal, for example, would be just like we have it in the strategic plan, that by 2024, 80% of our kids will be reading on grade level. That's the goal. Then the how is your take action.
Those are the strategic actions. But Ms. King, we're coming, and there's been some discussion. Is that achieved? We're still in a pandemic. So if we sit here and tell every teacher in Richland 1 that, as we've talked about, has worked so hard that regardless of the pandemic, regardless of the lost time, regardless of the deaths, regardless of the impact of those things, we don't care anything about that. What we care about is a target that we set in 19, not knowing COVID was coming, and so forth and so on, to say to our teachers, we don't care about that, you get here.
That's not what I'm saying, Dr. Witherspoon. That is not, absolutely not. But, you know, we celebrate the graduation rate, right? I mean, we are parading it, and as we should. That was a goal. So what's the difference?
That's one of the items, Ms. King, and again, as we talked about this, our discussion with data and so forth, that measure hasn't changed. Talked about fine-tuning and honing in strategies and so forth. So we do continue to do that and move forward. But there will be, and we'll come back to you all, this board, as we do some of these updates, to look at some adjustments to some of those end goals, again, given what's happened. So there has to be some adjustments made. So we will assess that, we will take a look at that, and we will come back and say, okay, some of these areas need to be adjusted. And that's what organizations do. Look at the realities, look at where we are. Yes, we strive to get from point A to point B. But in certain situations, when something happens, such as COVID or flood of 19, I mean of 15, and so forth. So we have to recognize that as an organization, and we have to adjust accordingly.
I appreciate that, Dr. Witherspoon. I think my last question is to the board. What are we trying to accomplish? What are we in the business of? What do we want to measure? If it's not student achievement, and yes, that comes with scores too, not just scores. But when I see that 70% of our kids do not meet the standards, that's very concerning. That's not necessarily a reflection of the teachers. But it's got to be a reflection. I mean, I only have one employee, right? So I don't know how our kids can be successful when I really see that. I look at the numbers that were presented tonight. We've looked at them in the past. They're important. They reflect what our students will be able to do later on. And that's very concerning. So my question to the board is, what is it that we want to see? Those are the goals. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments? Commissioner Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to offer up two substitute motions, Dr. Witherspoon, on the goals that have been presented on tonight. Looking at one, instead of its review and update the strategic plan annually, I'd like for us to review and update the strategic plan annually by quarterly reporting to the board. And I think that was what we discussed, that we get updates on a quarterly basis so that we can measure the growth of the students what's working and what is not. So I would ask for that amendment first, Mr. Chair, but I have two. And then on number 8, I would offer up to take strategic actions to expand recruiting and retention of staff efforts so as to ensure continuity of culture, expectations, and practices. Because I think that before we get to retaining, we need to recruit. So I would just ask that we add that in there as a district goal for us. I know that with us having those 16 pathways, trying to have smaller class size, it gives us challenges that other districts may not face. So sometimes our vacancy numbers are a little bit higher, but that isn't to say that we don't have smaller class sizes or we're not offering the programs to our students to give them opportunity. So I'm going to make those two motions as a secondary motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. It's been seconded by Commissioner King to make these amendments.
To goal
To
1 and goal 8.
To goal 1, which is quarterly reports, and to goal 8, to add the word recruit
And retain.
and retention of staff. Question or discussion about this item? Okay. Are you tracking this, Ms. Harris? Ms. Wilson?
I got it.
You got it, Jamie?
We got it.
You got it.
All right.
I'll give it to you.
All those in favor, this is a voice.
This is for the amendment?
This
Yeah,
is
to
the
the
amendment
amendment.
to 1 and 8.
All right. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed? All right, that is a 6-0 vote, Mrs. Wilson. You want to do that electronically? Okay. Let's vote electronically so it's recorded
For the amendment?
for the amendment.
Okay, thank you.
And then 2 through 7, we got to vote.
Yeah, thank you.
And you gotta take 2 through 7.
Yeah. Yes. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
It's a 6-0 vote.
It is a 6-0 vote for the amendment. Now we still need to vote in the balance of the goals,
That's 2 through 7.
which is 2 through 7.
I still have questions, Mr. Chair.
No problem. I'm coming to you. Commissioner King.
So, number 4, I'm not really sure
Well,
what it
excuse me,
means.
before you, are you asking about 2 through 7?
Uh-huh.
Okay,
Yes.
we need a motion for that.
Move for approval.
What?
Second.
It's been moved by, in order to question the motion of the 2 through 7, we need to put a motion on the floor so it can be addressed. Okay?
Oh, I thought we already,
Well, yeah, okay. No, go
that
ahead,
that was a main motion. Then
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
we didn't have to do a second motion because we go back to the original motion. That's why I did a
Right.
amendment.
Okay, so the balance. is in
Right, the balance,
The lower,
uh-huh.
lower motion.
Yes, sir.
So we
Okay,
can
go ahead,
back-
Ms. King, you
okay,
do have
so-
the floor
Right,
to
thank you,
question.
Mr. Chair. So on number 4, what does that mean, enhance middle school sports? And then another one is number 7. I knew Ms. Harris brought up some concerns at the last board meeting, and that, I don't discount that at all, but I don't really know, other than Richland One already has an adult center and community education services. Look, we're K through 12, and we have an adult education center. There are lots of organizations out there that have their own money to do a lot of things. I mean, let's partner with them and not necessarily do it with, that shouldn't be the focus of Richland One. I mean, the adults, once they matriculated to us, I mean, that's really diverting. That's my view. That's diverting from already what we have to do for kids. However, what I heard earlier and was bringing earlier is, tell you what, that birth through 5, that's critical, because if we don't get our kids started on the right foot, with establishing, we have a strong early childhood, I'm sure we have things in place, but if we don't look for public-private partnerships and faith-based partnerships, we will never get out of this funk. We won't. And just like Ms. Harris says, we have to engage our parents. We need to be very aggressive about it. Not in a mean way at all, but we have to be very aggressive in enrolling partners that will help us engage our parents and give our parents the ammunition. I mean, this is critical. That's where I would want to see a goal, a measurable goal, because we can measure the readiness of our kindergartners already.
That is a piece, Mr. Chair, members of the board, that,
Number 5.
right, the district is indeed, administration, the district is indeed taking a look at, and that is embedded in our strategic plan. And so we will be providing you additional information and progress with that piece as well.
Okay? Any other discussion? Okay? With no other discussion about items 2 through 7, we'll now look to cast our vote. All those in favor? All those opposed?
Mr. Bishop, there's a 5-1 vote,
Is a what?
5-1.
It's a 5-1, 5 yeas, 1 nay vote. The ayes have it. Thank you. We're now going to item 10.01, legal status report, Attorney Williams.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Dr. Witherspoon, information was provided during executive session on the status of 2 legal matters during that executive session.
All right.
This is an information item.
This is an information item. Any question or discussion? Seeing none, hearing none, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We're now going to item 10.02, Superintendent's Report. Dr. Witherspoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Give me 1 second. Last Thursday, October 21st, had an opportunity to participate in the ribbon-cutting ceremony marking the grand opening of the Victory Cafe at Hayward Career and Technology Center. The cafe is a school-based enterprise operated by students in the Victory program, which is based at Hayward. The program provides education and training for special needs students ages 18 through 21. Students will sell coffee and pastry in the cafe from 8:30 to 9:30 a.m. daily. And due to the pandemic, the cafe will initially only serve Hayward students and staff, with plans to open to the public later this year, or later. Proceeds from the cafe will be used for activities and incentives for students. Congratulations to the students and to Hayward Principal Dr. Sherry Rivers and her entire team. We also want to thank Arul Shinram from the Starbucks Community Store on Forest Drive for mentoring the students. The South Carolina State Fair ended Sunday, October 24th, and we want to congratulate the 23 Richland 1 art students and 1 art teacher who received honors and awards for the fair's 2021 art competition. Richland 1 students competed in 2D, 3D, and photography divisions with more than 900 other K-12 students from across the state. The names and schools of our honorees are posted on the district's website, richland1.org. Speaking of talented artists, congratulations to Gabby Brown for winning the 2021 National Congressional Art Competition for South Carolina's 2nd Congressional District. Gabby is a 2021 graduate of Dreher High School. Artwork submitted for the competition had to represent this year's theme, the Palmetto State, capturing the spirit of South Carolina. Brown's photograph is of her sister outstretched on grass with flowers adorning her hair. As the winner of the competition, Gabby's photograph will hang in the Cannon Tunnel of the U.S. Capitol for 1 year. The tunnel is the most highly traveled access point between the U.S. House of Representatives and the U.S. Capitol. We also want to congratulate the 28 Richland One Orchestra students who earned a chair in the South Carolina Music Educators Association's Midlands Region Orchestra. The students had to perform a scale, play a prepared piece, and sight read new music. They are now eligible to audition for the South Carolina All-State Orchestra later this fall. The culminating clinic will be held November 20th at Irmo High School. The students' names and schools are posted on our website. All month, we've been holding flu shot clinics in partnership with Prisma Health. The last 2 clinics will be held Saturday, October 30th, from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Weber Elementary School and the W.A. Perry Middle School. Free flu shots will be available to anyone 6 months old and up. Children under 16 must have parental consent. For more information, go to richlandone.org or prismahealth.org/free flu shots. We are looking for even more talented teachers and support staff to join Richland One team. Our Human Resources Office is holding a virtual fall interview fair on Saturday, November 13th from 9 a.m. to noon. This event is specifically for candidates seeking employment as teachers, school-based instructional support staff, social workers, and nurses. Certified participants should possess or be eligible for a South Carolina teaching certificate. All participants are asked to complete a Richland One application and register prior to the event. The registration deadline is Wednesday, November 3rd. And details, including the registration link, are posted on our website, richlandone.org. Also, as Commissioner Devine stated, this week is National Red Ribbon Week, October 23rd through the 31st. This year's theme, Drug-Free Looks Like Me. And several of our schools are holding special activities this week to promote the importance of being drug-free. And we appreciate those efforts. As a reminder to our students, parents, and staff, Friday, October 29th is an early release day for students. Parent-teacher conferences will be held. Parents who have any questions about the schedule should contact their child's school. Also this week, Friday, October 29th, is also Pink Out Day in Richland One. We encourage all of our students, staff, parents, and community members to join us in wearing pink in support of the fight against breast cancer. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Witherspoon. Do anyone have any questions for the superintendent? Do anyone have any questions for the superintendent? All right, thank you, Dr. Witherspoon, for your report. We're now going to item 11, which is adjournment. We have one item under that item, which is 11.01. The next regular meeting of the Richland One Board of School Commissioners will be held on Tuesday, November 9th, 2021, at Lower Richland High School, 2615 Lower Richland Boulevard, Hopkins, South Carolina, at 7 p.m. With no other objections, we now stand adjourned. Good night.